Tonight, on the Monaro Zone, Councillor Rose demands an independent investigation into the Cooma and Bombala pool disaster, a project funded in 2018 that still hasn't delivered functioning pools in 2026, despite millions being spent and contractors being terminated, some even unpaid. Rose called for answers on contractor selection, financial oversight, governance failures, delays, and why councillors and the public were allegedly kept in the dark for years. And despite one of the biggest project failures in recent council history, dissenting voices still push back against transparency. If losing millions of dollars and leaving communities without pools for years doesn't trigger an investigation, what will? Rose is the type of person this region needs, someone willing to stand up to the constant obfuscation, excuses, and lies, and demand accountability for the people footing the bill.
Sorry, debate it. Councillor Rose, you have your 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, the fact that Councillor Stewart's already looking a bit doubtful about this is a worry, but I must say that I hope to persuade Councillor Stewart about this motion because what we have here, Councillor Stewart will admit, is a mess. In fact, I call it a disaster for the community and what's happened in this whole project. What we've learned is that organisations that investigate themselves always find there's no problem. The ABC's a classic. So what we need, I think, is an independent investigation for transparency. Cooma and Bombala communities deserve the truth about what went wrong. And we're never going to get the truth. With the best will in the world, people that investigate themselves always find that they've done a terrific job. But just let me outline some of the issues. Grant funding was secured according to what Councillor Davis said at a meeting in 2018. As of this month, neither pool has been delivered, and who knows when it will be delivered. The contractor Dalsky was terminated in April, with the project assessed at roughly 90% complete. And in fact, in January, councillors were assured that things were going to be okay, nothing to worry about. We're now facing at least $588,000 in unbudgeted costs, but we know the cost is significantly more than that, probably a couple of million. We're going to have to rejig our budget. So the question isn't whether something went wrong. Something did go wrong, but we don't know when and what. So independent scrutiny is needed. Firstly, the contractor selection. There's a lot of scuttlebutt in the community. I've heard it from about 12 or 14 different people that there were a whole lot of questions around Dalsky that were known and available publicly at the time the contractor selection was made. Secondly, contract administration. The project ran for years before elected councillors were meaningfully informed, as Councillor Stewart has said. This raises a fundamental governance question. In a project of this scale and one of the most significant capital works and significant to the community, when did staff identify that things went wrong? The first thing we discovered was in December, and we were assured that the pools would be open for Australia Day. Now, that was never going to happen. Third, the timeline. Basically, we've been running for so long that the grant funding body doesn't even exist anymore, and now we're scuttling to try and find out what to do with that. So there's a whole story about design, procurement, and construction oversight that needs to be examined. Fourth, financial management. Were the controls adequate? Well, clearly not. We've heard yesterday there was a significant issue around financial management, and there was reassurance given to subcontractors that they were going to be paid, and that didn't happen. Now, I'll address the CEO's response directly because basically the CEO has indicated support for an independent review and also noted we should submit it to ARIC, and that's fine. And I think that's something that really does need to happen. But what we need to do is to understand there are systemic failures. And in this situation, I'm not trying to go on a witch hunt and blame people, although it's clear that there are people to blame. But we're not on a witch hunt. We're looking at, from a governance point of view, what are the systematic failures that have led to this problem? Unless we identify that, Mr. Mayor, for sure, we're going to repeat the problem again at some stage in the future. So the CEO said that investigations of this type cost between 70 and 130. I'll do it for 10 grand for what that's worth. But my assessment is the work be done certainly for less than 70 by an independent person of some description. The cost of learning the lessons, I think, is modest when you consider that we're spending over 6 million and probably 8 million. And I would contend with Councillor Rooney on his challenge around the 4 million for the hostel. There's no real cash changing hands, Councillor Rooney. We're just transferring a facility, but it's a different issue. We're not going to find funds. But I just would move that in, Mr. Mayor. But one of our values is transparency. So my motion asks Council to commission an independent investigation with a clear scope to ensure that an investigator is selected through a transparent process and not delegated away and published for the community to read. The residents of our region have been waiting for these pools. There's obviously an ongoing problem. They would receive a lot of reassurance that we were serious about finding out what went wrong in this process if there was such an investigation made. So, Councillor, I'm sure that I've now convinced you that this is a really great idea.
But not quite. But
Councillor Rooney.
Despite Councillor Rose's denials, this does smell like a witch hunt to me. It presumes that there has been some deficiency in the contractor evaluation process, some inadequacy in contract administration and financial controls, and that there are guilty parties there to be found and punished. Now, I don't think that's the case, Councillor Rose. I think this is very unfortunate, but it is just a matter of blind fate that some projects will go bad because the prime contractor goes into administration. Now, that can't be foreseen. I mean, if it was foreseeable, well, then obviously council staff would not have awarded the prime contract to a company that was going to go bankrupt.
It's just to be, I don't like to have a point of order, but Councillor really called this a witch hunt. I think the language was intemperate and not right, Mr. There's nothing witch huntish about this. So I just asked them, Councillor, really reconsider the language about this.
I take your point, Councillor Rose. I'm talking about how it would be perceived.
another criticism of it all, Councillor Rooney, and I'll be very critical of this one, is that the decision by the planners and that to decide to take that lip down in the Bombala pool to an extra 400 millimetres without any report coming into council. Now, that was a decision, and it was stated here that it was the cheapest and quickest option to do. Now, we shouldn't accept that. And we've got to try to, which is the best way of going about it, to say to our management and staff and that we don't accept that side of things. We've got to, I agree with you that we shouldn't be going down a path. These things happen, but we have to make sure, and whichever the process is we do from here on in, that we don't let this sort of situation get to the level before there's intervention or something done in the future. Now, how we go about, I can see where Councillor Rose is coming from here. I don't know whether an independent person spending that money is going to be good value for money, but if there was a way forward that we can really identify the failings, we should be identifying that and knowing about it, because in all honesty, it has been a very poor exercise and management by the council. That's all I can say.
Mr. Mayor, look, I think there's some real problems in this council, and I'd say from the community point of view, we're a council that doesn't believe in consequences. I don't think any other organisation overseeing a disaster of this magnitude would not seek to do something. And just to take note of Councillor Elliott's contention that we should just defer this. This will take 6 months, even if we do something now. Given council's normal work program, we might receive some information within 3 months. It'll take another 3 months for something to happen. If we don't do something today, nothing will happen for sure. I'll just go through some of the points that Councillor Rose made. This smells like a witch hunt. No, this is not a witch hunt. This is just good governance. We can't let projects like this that result in disastrous outcomes, where the mayor has been made to look really foolish in the media because he's given undertakings, well-intentioned, that pools would be available, and then further that pools would be available again when there was never any chance of that happening. The issue of no fault, there is clearly a fault here, and I think Councillor Rooney is absolutely wrong about this, and he would never accept this in the private sector. He said it's blind fate that some projects go bad. This is not blind fate. This was evident very early in the process, certainly from what I've seen back as far as August. It couldn't have been foreseen. Yes, it could have been foreseen. This is the risk of doing business. No, we don't want to accept that sort of risk of doing business where we've got problems we first become aware of in December, and then finally in April, the project is terminated after being reassured that everything was going to be okay and it was just restructuring. Cause fear and uncertainty by council staff only if they've been incompetent. Because this is not an issue in terms of where there's a problem. We're not trying to target any council staff. We're trying to target the process, but this is the whole story. And Councillor Rooney spoke against his own contention because he said we need sort of investing in better upgrading of staff skills. Well, that suggests that we didn't have staff with the skills in the first place. So this is an issue. We have to identify where the situation is. Staff can't be able to foresee issues, and which contractors. There's evidence that there were issues that were foreseeable, and we didn't hear that early enough. And as Councillor Stewart has also said, we have to identify when this information was available for councillors, and as Councillor Stewart's also noted, that decisions were made to put in place a dangerous pool in Bombala where we could have kiddies dying, trying to grasp up 400 millimetres to the pool wall, and that should never have been allowed to continue. So what we need to do, we must take responsibility as the governance body, and we can't say there's been no problem here. There's been a serious problems. I take Councillor Davis's point. There may be a first cut at this in terms of our own project management framework, of which I'm unfamiliar. But I think, as she's also noted, there's some red button issues. But we fail as a governing body if we're not going to seek independent review of one of the most high-profile, significant failures since I've been on council. That's only 18 months, mind you. But it's a significant failure, and it's a significant impost to the community because the chances of this being sorted out and pools being available for the summer are remote, in my view. So I do think that this isn't too early to review it. This is the time to start a process which would see council areas in about 3 or 4 months' time, a scope available and a time frame and a budget for it. If we don't start now, we'll never do it, and it's too late then. So we need to act while the iron is hot, while there's issues before, and it would give a lot of reassurance to the community that we're serious about some of the issues that have come up. In particular, I suppose, when we think of the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for subcontractors that they're not going to see, it's a very important thing to notice. Where did council fail if we did? We may not have. But this process will give us that opportunity, and I believe it's in everyone's interest here, self-interest, to show that we're serious about an independent review. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Stewart, Councillor Rose, Councillor Hannah. All those against? Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah. Oh.
Councillor Davis, Councillor Rooney, Councillor Elliott. Lost. Moving on.